Have you ever watched a movie that didn't just scare you, but crawled under your skin, whispering in your mind long after the credits rolled? These are not tales of monsters or ghosts, but of the human psyche slowly unraveling. Tonight, we dive into the abyss of fear where sanity bends and reality fractures. From The Shining's haunted corridors to Black Swan's descent into obsession, each film here will test what you believe is real. Stay with me, if you dare, to face the top 10 psychological horror movies that will break your mind. 1. The Shining, 1980. A writer's winter retreat descends into madness inside an empty hotel that hungers for souls. There's a kind of silence that feels heavier than any scream, a silence that breathes, that listens. That's the silence of the Overlook Hotel, nestled deep in the snowy mountains. It looks peaceful from afar, but once you step inside, you know something is off. The hallways stretch too far, the air feels too still, and the walls, they seem to remember things you wish they didn't. Jack Torrance arrives here with his wife Wendy and young son Danny, hoping for a new start, a winter caretaker's job, isolation, time to write. What could go wrong? But solitude can be dangerous when your mind isn't ready to face its own shadows. The longer Jack stays, the more the Overlook whispers to him, not in words, but in urges, the kind that twist love into rage, and reason into madness. Each day bleeds into the next. The snow traps them, and the hotel begins to breathe through Jack. The typewriter becomes his confession booth, every word an unraveling thread. You can almost hear the click of the keys echoing through the empty halls. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Over and over again, until it's not writing anymore, it's a ritual. Danny, with his strange gift, the Shining, sees what the adults can't. Blood flooding the hallways, the twin girls who never left, the evil that smiles politely before it devours. He tries to warn them, but who listens to a child? Especially when his father's smile is growing wider, his eyes emptier. And Wendy, poor Wendy, clutching her son, running through the same maze of halls that once felt safe. The axe hits the door, and Jack's voice turns sing-song sweet. Here's Johnny. That moment, that madness, it's not just fear, it's recognition. Because deep down, we all know what it's like to hear something inside us whisper, "Let me out." The Shining isn't just a story about ghosts, it's about how isolation feeds insanity, how anger echoes in empty rooms, and how the scariest place in the world can be your own mind. The Overlook Hotel isn't haunted by spirits, it's haunted by us. So, if you ever find yourself alone in a place too quiet, too still, ask yourself, are you really alone? Or is something, somewhere, quietly watching, waiting, for you to crack? 2. Black Swan, 2010. A ballerina's pursuit of perfection spirals into obsession, madness, and self-destruction. Have you ever wanted something so badly that it started to destroy you? That's the quiet horror of Black Swan. It's not about monsters hiding in the dark, it's about the one living inside your reflection. Nina Sayers is delicate, disciplined, and desperate to be perfect. Every breath, every movement, every glance in the mirror is a test of control. When she's chosen to play both the White Swan and the Black Swan in Swan Lake, it should be her dream come true. But dreams can rot from the inside when the pressure begins to twist into fear. The White Swan is grace, purity, innocence, everything Nina already is. But the Black Swan? She's passion, chaos, and sin. To become her, Nina must lose control. That's what terrifies her most. The more she tries to suppress her darker side, the more it slips through the cracks. You can see it in her trembling hands, in her hollow eyes, in the blood beneath her fingernails. And then there's Lily, beautiful, free, everything Nina isn't. She dances like she's alive, while Nina dances like she's trapped. Lily becomes the mirror that reflects all the things Nina refuses to see. But is Lily even real? Or just a shadow, born from Nina's unraveling mind? The line blurs, and suddenly, Nina isn't sure what's performance and what's hallucination. The stage becomes a battleground between who she is and who she's becoming. Every rehearsal feels like a sacrifice, every pirouette a surrender. The music swells, the lights dim, and Nina starts to bleed, physically, mentally, spiritually. The girl who wanted to be perfect begins to disappear, and in her place rises something darker, more powerful, and utterly terrifying. By the time the final performance arrives, Nina has given everything, her sanity, her body, her soul. The audience applauds, unaware that what they're witnessing isn't just art, but a breakdown turned into beauty. She has finally become the Black Swan. And as she whispers, "I was perfect," you can't help but shiver. Because perfection, in Black Swan, isn't about mastery, it's about destruction. It's about how far we'll go to silence our insecurities, to bury the parts of ourselves that feel too wild, too ugly, too real. So ask yourself, if you stared into the mirror long enough, searching for perfection, what would stare back at you? 3. Hereditary, 2018. A family's quiet grief unravels into a horrifying legacy that no one can escape. Grief has a sound. It's the silence after a scream, the kind that lingers in your bones. Hollow and heavy, that's the sound echoing through Hereditary. A film that doesn't just frighten you, it infects you. It begins with a funeral, a grandmother's death, a family gathered in mourning. But even in their sadness, something feels wrong. The shadows in the room are too long. The air feels too thick. Annie, the mother, can't shake the feeling that her family was never truly her own. Her daughter, Charlie, quiet and strange, seems to know things no child should. Her son, Peter, hides behind silence, afraid to look too closely at what's happening around him. And her husband, detached, just wants to pretend everything is normal. But nothing about this family is normal. One tragedy follows another, like a curse handed down through generations. You can feel it creeping closer, the sense that something ancient and cruel is waiting for them to break. The house becomes a prison. Every shadow a memory, every reflection a warning. Annie spends her nights building tiny dollhouse replicas of her trauma, trying to control the uncontrollable. But what if the thing haunting them isn't outside at all? What if it's in their blood? There's a moment, a sharp, brutal moment, that divides Hereditary in two. Before it, you think you're watching a story about loss. After it, you realize you're watching a descent into hell. It's the kind of scene that leaves you breathless, staring at the screen in disbelief, whispering, "Did that just happen?" As the film spirals deeper into madness, reality dissolves. You begin to question what's real, what's dream, and whether the family ever had a chance to escape their fate. Ari Aster doesn't rely on jump scares. He relies on dread, the slow, suffocating dread that something inevitable is unfolding. By the end, when the truth finally reveals itself, you realize the family was doomed long before the story began. Every choice, every death, every scream, it was all part of something bigger, something passed down like a ritual. Hereditary isn't just a horror film, it's a mirror reflecting the pain of loss, the fear of becoming your parents, and the terror of realizing that destiny might not be yours to change. So, ask yourself this. If the darkness that haunts your family isn't supernatural, but something you were born with, would you ever really be free? 4. Midsommar, 2019. A couple's grief-filled journey turns into a sunlit nightmare hidden behind smiles and flowers. Horror usually lives in the dark, but Midsommar dares to bloom in the sunlight. There are no shadows to hide in here, no monsters creeping from the night. Instead, the terror is bright, smiling, and wrapped in a crown of flowers. Donnie just lost everything. Her family is gone, her grief so deep it feels bottomless. She's fragile, clinging to a relationship already falling apart, when her boyfriend, Christian, invites her to join his friends on a trip to a remote Swedish commune. She goes, not because she wants to, but because she has nowhere else to go. She thinks she's running from her pain. She doesn't realize she's walking straight into it. The village greets them with warmth, white robes, kind faces, laughter under the endless daylight. It's beautiful, too beautiful. Their smiles are too wide, their rituals too rehearsed. Everything feels perfect, unnervingly perfect. The air hums with something you can't name, like a secret everyone knows except you. Days pass, and the group begins to realize that the festival they've come to witness isn't a celebration, it's a cycle. A ritual, a balance between life and death. Every dance, every feast, every scream has meaning. You can almost feel the walls of sanity closing in as the line between cult and community vanishes. Donnie watches it all unravel, the sacrifices, the ceremonies, the strange unity of the people who live and die together without fear. While her friends panic, mock, and try to leave, she starts to understand the rhythm of this place. For the first time, she feels seen. That's the true horror of Midsommar. The way grief can twist into belonging. The way isolation can find comfort in madness. When the final ceremony begins, Donnie stands among the flowers, her face painted with innocence and sorrow. The man she once loved burns behind her, the life she knew dissolving in the flames. Yet she smiles. It's not a smile of joy, it's the smile of someone who has finally surrendered. Midsommar isn't just about a cult, it's about rebirth through destruction. About the quiet seduction of letting go of pain by embracing something even darker. It asks a question that lingers long after the credits fade. If the world broke your heart, and someone offered to build you a new one, no matter the cost, would you say yes? 5. The Babadook, 2014. A grieving mother and her troubled son are haunted by a creature that feeds on sorrow and fear. Grief doesn't always howl, it sometimes whispers. It creeps into your home quietly, sits beside you at dinner, and follows you into your dreams. In The Babadook, that whisper takes shape, crawling out of a children's storybook and into the lives of a mother and her son who can no longer tell the difference between mourning and madness. Emilia is exhausted. Her husband is gone, taken in a car crash on the night their son, Samuel, was born. Every day feels like a battle she didn't choose, a demanding child, a job that barely holds her together, and a house that feels heavier with each passing night. There's a stillness in her eyes, the kind that comes from too many sleepless years. But Samuel isn't quiet. He sees something in the shadows, something waiting to come in. It begins innocently enough. A book appears on the shelf one night, Mr. Babadook. The pages are darkly illustrated. The words sing songs sweet, like a lullaby that knows too much. But the story doesn't end, it warns. If it's in a word, or it's in a look, you can't get rid of the Babadook. Emilia tears it apart, burns it, hides it, but it always comes back. Soon, the knocking starts. 3 hard knocks. Babadook. Duke. Duke. The air thickens, the walls close in, and sleep becomes dangerous. The Babadook isn't a monster hiding under the bed. It's grief itself, an emotion so raw it takes form. Wearing a top hat and a grin that stretches too wide, it doesn't just haunt, it infects. It feeds on pain, on guilt, on the parts of ourselves we refuse to face. As Emilia's sanity unravels, you can feel the monster's breath on your neck. Her screams echo not from fear, but from recognition. The Babadook isn't after her son, it's after her. Every motherly instinct turns inside out. Every comforting word curdles into rage. She becomes both victim and villain, trapped in the mirror of her own sorrow. But the Babadook isn't about defeat. It's about survival. The real horror isn't that the monster exists, it's that you can never truly kill it. You can only learn to live with it. In the end, Emilia doesn't destroy the Babadook, she feeds it. She accepts it, because grief never leaves, it just changes shape. So ask yourself, if your pain came knocking in the dark, whispering your name in that deep, rasping voice, would you open the door? 6. Get Out, 2017. A young man's weekend with his girlfriend's family turns into a terrifying trap where minds, and bodies, are not their own. There's a kind of horror that doesn't hide in the dark. It smiles. It shakes your hand. It offers you tea. Get Out begins like a simple visit to meet the parents. But behind every polite word and warm welcome, something is terribly off. Chris, a young black photographer, is nervous but hopeful as he drives with his girlfriend, Rose, to her family's countryside estate. She assures him they're not racist, just a little awkward. But as soon as he arrives, that awkwardness feels heavier, like a mask stretched too tight. Her parents are overly friendly, too interested, too rehearsed. The way they talk about his body, his strength, his genetic gifts, feels more like an evaluation than a compliment. The estate is idyllic, quiet, bathed in sunlight, but the peace feels artificial, like a stage set for something sinister. The house staff, Black servants with hollow smiles move like ghosts. Their eyes empty yet filled with silent screams. There's a tension that hums beneath every conversation. A sense that everyone knows a secret except Chris. Then comes the hypnotism. A quiet conversation. A cup of tea. A clink of a spoon. And suddenly, Chris's world implodes, his mind falling backward into an endless void. The sunken place, where he can see but not move, scream but not be heard. It's one of the most chilling metaphors ever put to film. The loss of control. The erasure of identity. The horror of being trapped in your own body while someone else takes over. The Armitage family's secret slowly unfolds, a grotesque ritual where consciousness is transplanted. White minds inhabiting black bodies in pursuit of eternal youth, privilege, and power. It's modern slavery disguised as science. Dressed in civility, executed with a smile. But Get Out isn't just about body horror, it's about psychological imprisonment. It's about gaslighting, manipulation, and the terror of realizing you've been prey all along. Every polite conversation is a test. Every laugh hides a lie. Every smile is a snare. When Chris finally fights back, it's more than survival, it's reclamation. Every drop of blood, every desperate breath, is a refusal to be consumed, to be silenced, to disappear. Jordan Peele's masterpiece turns everyday social discomfort into existential dread, forcing us to confront a truth far scarier than any ghost. Evil doesn't always come with claws or fangs. Sometimes, it comes with good manners. So, next time someone tells you, "We'd have voted for Obama a third time," ask yourself, are they being friendly? Or are they sharpening the spoon? 7. The Silence of the Lambs, 1991. A young FBI trainee seeks the help of a brilliant but monstrous killer to catch another madman. Some monsters hide in the dark. Others sit across from you, smiling, speaking softly, dissecting your soul word by word. The Silence of the Lambs is not just a thriller, it's a descent into the human psyche. A dance between predator and prey where both wear masks of civility. Clarice Starling is young, ambitious, and haunted by her past. She's trying to prove herself in a world that underestimates her, where every man looks at her as something fragile, out of place. When the FBI sends her to question Dr. Hannibal Lecter, a brilliant psychiatrist turned cannibalistic murderer, she walks into the lion's den armed only with her composure. The first meeting is unforgettable. The cell isn't dirty or dim. It's spotless, clinical, and there he stands, Hannibal, polite and still, his eyes sharp as scalpels. He doesn't attack her, he studies her. Every word he speaks is a cut, every pause a trap. He sees through her fears, her ambitions, her guilt. Quid pro quo. Clarice, he says, offering truths for truths, peeling her open one confession at a time. Meanwhile, another killer stalks the world above, Buffalo Bill, a man sowing his own transformation from the skin of his victims. The horror of his acts is physical, grotesque, but the real terror lies in how easily the mind can twist itself to justify monstrosity. As Clarice chases Bill, her conversations with Hannibal begin to change her. He becomes both her tormentor and her guide. He pushes her to look inward, to confront the childhood screams she's buried beneath her badge, the lambs she couldn't save, the helplessness she can't forget. That's the film's true darkness, not just in murder or madness, but in memory, the way trauma becomes its own prison. When Clarice finally stands before Buffalo Bill, the fear is suffocating, but she doesn't break. She becomes the hunter. The lamb finally silences the screaming within her. And yet, Hannibal remains, out there, free, watching, whispering through the static of her mind. The Silence of the Lambs is more than a crime story, it's a psychological labyrinth. It asks, what's the difference between the monster who kills and the one who listens too closely to monsters? So tell me, dear viewer, if Hannibal Lecter looked you in the eye and asked what you fear most, would you be brave enough to answer? 8. Psycho, 1960. A lonely motel owner hides a deadly secret behind his innocent smile and his mother's haunting presence. There's something about Psycho that crawls under your skin and stays there. Maybe it's the quiet hum of that roadside motel, the flicker of neon lights against the rain, or the feeling that someone, something, is always watching from behind a cracked door. Alfred Hitchcock didn't just make a horror film, he created a mirror, reflecting how fragile sanity can be when guilt, repression, and obsession twist the human mind. It all begins with Marion Crane, a woman who dares to steal $40 and escape her ordinary life. She drives through the night, rain pounding her windshield like a warning. When she stops at the Bates Motel, she's just looking for shelter. But the man who greets her, Norman Bates, seems kind, nervous, and lonely. He speaks softly about his sick mother, about being trapped in her shadow. He smiles, but it's a smile that hides something broken. Then comes that scene, the shower, the scream, the knife flashing in the light. A moment so sudden, so brutal, that it shattered every rule of cinema at the time. But the real terror doesn't end there, it begins afterward. Because Norman isn't what he seems. The motel isn't what it seems. And neither is the mother who scolds him from the house on the hill. As the truth unravels, we see the real monster, not a ghost, not a demon, but the fractured mind of a man split in two. Norman's tenderness and cruelty coexist, trapped in a cycle of denial and desire. He's both victim and killer, child and parent, consumed by a voice that isn't his yet sounds so familiar. That's what makes Psycho so terrifying. It isn't about death, but about identity, about how a human mind, when pushed too far, can create its own nightmare to survive. Every sound, every camera angle, every heartbeat in this film feels intentional. Hitchcock pulls you into Norman's madness until you're not sure where sympathy ends and horror begins. By the time the truth is revealed, by the time the police find out what's really left of Mother, you can't look away. You're horrified, but part of you understands. So here's a question for you. If you walked into that lonely motel tonight, and Norman offered you a room with a polite smile, would you stay the night? 9. The Others, 2001. A mother protecting her children from ghosts slowly realizes the haunting may come from within. There's a kind of quiet dread that The Others captures perfectly, the kind that doesn't scream at you but whispers in the dark corners of your mind. The fog rolls thick over a lonely mansion on the island of Jersey, and inside, Grace Stewart keeps her 2 children hidden from the sunlight. She says they're photosensitive. That exposure could harm them. But maybe the real danger isn't outside those walls. Maybe it's already inside. Grace, played with icy precision by Nicole Kidman, is a woman bound by fear, faith, and grief. Her husband went off to war and never came back. The house is all she has left, and she clings to order like it's her last breath. Doors locked, curtains drawn, lamps dimmed. Every sound echoes like a warning. Every shadow feels alive. Then the new servants arrive, smiling too quietly, moving a little too softly, and the children begin to whisper, "There are others in the house." At first, Grace dismisses it, just childish imagination. Surely. But soon the piano plays when no one's there. Footsteps creak across empty rooms. And photographs of the dead, hidden in dusty drawers, seem to watch her every move. She tries to keep her faith, to control the chaos. Yet something is unraveling, not just in the house, but inside her. The more she fights to maintain her reality, the more fragile it becomes. The beauty of The Others lies in its restraint. It never shouts its horror, it lets it breathe. The silence becomes unbearable. The fear grows not from monsters or blood, but from uncertainty, the realization that what we believe to be true might be the very thing haunting us. When the final revelation comes, it doesn't jump out of the dark, it sits beside you and whispers, "You were never alive to begin with." That twist doesn't just shock, it devastates. Because you've spent the entire film empathizing with Grace, feeling her pain, her confusion, her desperate need to protect her children. And then suddenly, you understand. She's the ghost. She's been haunting them all along. When the fog lifts and the truth settles, you're left with one haunting question. How many of us are trapped in our own houses of denial, clinging to illusions because we're too afraid to face the truth? So the next time you hear a creak in your hallway when you're alone, don't be so sure it isn't you who's doing the haunting. 10. Saint Maud, 2019. A lonely hospice nurse believes she's on a divine mission to save her patient's soul, no matter the cost. Sometimes the scariest horrors are the ones born out of devotion. Saint Maud is not a story of monsters or hauntings. It's about the terrifying abyss that opens when faith consumes the fragile human mind. Maud is a hospice nurse, quiet, withdrawn, and painfully devout. Her small apartment feels more like a confessional than a home. Bare walls, flickering candles, whispers to God in the dark. She believes he listens. She believes he answers. When Maud begins caring for Amanda, a once famous dancer now dying of cancer, something awakens inside her, a sense of purpose, of divine calling. Amanda is everything Maud isn't: worldly, sensual, unrepentant. Yet Maud becomes convinced that God sent her here for a reason: to save Amanda's soul before it's too late. What begins as pious concern soon curdles into obsession. Every touch, every word, every look feels charged with heavenly meaning. Or so Maud believes. The film wraps you in her delusion. You start seeing through her eyes, the trembling candles, the whispered prayers, the ecstatic moments of what she calls God's presence. But behind those trembling hands lies something darker: guilt, loneliness, and a deep, unspoken trauma from her past. She's not just seeking God's love, she's desperate to escape her own damnation. What makes Saint Maud so deeply unsettling isn't what you see, it's what you feel. The quiet intensity, the suffocating devotion, the slow descent into madness disguised as holiness. Every frame burns with a sacred unease. And you start to wonder, is she blessed or cursed? Is that voice she hears divine? Or just the echo of her breaking mind? And then comes the ending. That final moment where illusion and reality collide in one horrifying act of faith. For a fleeting second, Maud believes she's become a saint, surrounded by light, her body glowing in holy fire. But then the truth cuts through. It's not divine light. It's flames. She's burning alive. And that smile, that haunting, transcendent smile, is the face of someone who has confused salvation with destruction. Saint Maud doesn't just disturb you, it lingers like a prayer that's gone wrong. Echoing in your chest long after the screen fades to black, it asks a question you can't quite shake: how far would you go to feel chosen? And when you stare into the fire, will you still believe it's heaven's light staring back? Maybe the scariest thing about these films isn't what you see on screen, it's what they leave inside your head after the credits roll. The whispers, the questions, the uneasy feeling that maybe you could lose your mind. 2. Which one twisted your thoughts the most? Tell me in the comments. I want to know which story still haunts you. If you enjoyed this dive into the dark corners of the mind, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because the next nightmare is already waiting.